Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Pharmacy Supply Chain webinar sponsored by GEP. Today, we would like to spend the next 45 minutes covering a couple of important topics, and then at the end we will have a Q&A session. Please feel free to submit your questions through the chat box. My name is Alan Ozyazgin. I'm the VP of Supply Chain Software Solutions at GEP. And again, I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for spending the next hour or so with us as we go through these topics. As we all know, pharma and the supply chain is definitely in the forefront of a lot of people, and we hope that we will be able to cover some interesting topics for you. First and foremost, I would like to do a quick introduction about the GEP. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but obviously we are proud to be the sponsor of this event. And as we talk to the panelists, hopefully it will all be relevant to what we do and what we bring to the table. As an organization, GEP, we are a global leader in supply chain and procurement. One of our very big focus areas is supply chain visibility and collaboration, and that is some of the solutions that we bring to the table. And you know, over 450 customers around the world, 110 countries, over 5,000 employees. So, you know, we have been around about 20 plus years, and again, happy to be the sponsor of this event and look forward to, you know, spending the next hour with you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our panelists. I'll just briefly do the introductions in terms of who they are and what their background is. Dr. Rob Handfield is the Bank of America University Distinguished Professor of Supply Chain Management at North Carolina State University and the Director of Supply Chain Resource Cooperative. He also serves as an adjunct professor with the Supply Chain Management Research Group at the Manchester Business School. Dr. Handfield is the consulting editor of the Journal of Operations Management, one of the leading supply chain management journals in the field, and he's the author of several books on supply chain management. Handfield has consulted with over 25 Fortune 500 companies. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Handfield. Pramod Gupta is the Vice President of Supply Chain Consulting for North America at GEP, with the primary responsibilities for growing GEP supply chain market share, delivering revenue goals, hiring the best talent, and delivering measurable results to clients. Pramod brings 20 plus years of supply chain transformation expertise and leadership. He delivers EBITDA impact by implementing analytics-based solutions and embedding business process improvements in manufacturing, planning, and logistics for Fortune 500 companies across consumer, diversified industrials, chemicals, life sciences, mining, and printing sectors. He specializes in manufacturing and distribution, make versus buy, multi-site performance improvement programs, demand and supply planning, and Industry 4.0 solutions. Thank you, Pramod, joining us. And last but not the least, Bernali Mukherjee has over 20 years of experience in consulting, product management, and leading teams in the development of market-driven software solutions. At GEP, Bernali is responsible for ensuring customer needs are met in an impactful way with our end-to-end supply chain and procurement technology, using the latest advances in next-generation technology and new user experience. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Pramod to start our webinar. Again, thank you for joining us and look forward to getting your questions. Pramod?
Good morning, everyone. And Alan, thank you. I'm going to talk through and share some of my observations in supply chain that we are seeing, particularly as it relates to life sciences and pharma sector. But wow, what a year we had, disruptive and highly uncertain. But we have the vaccine now, and I actually did get my shot last week, Alan. My 10-year-old certainly feels that his parents are his parents are invincible now, and that he doesn't have to take a shower every day returning from school. But we all know we have to stay safe and keep our guards up. We all experienced. Let me just make sure I navigate to the. Alan, could you navigate to the next slide for me? I'm having some trouble here technically. Thank you. We all experienced the shortages in essential goods, be it groceries or toilet paper or off-the-shelf medicines during the early days of COVID onset. And COVID truly tested supply chain resiliency beyond the breaking point, and supply chains were a mess, are still a mess for some companies, until companies reconfigured and figured out how to supply chain or how to run their supply chains in a hurry. We are seeing a heightened sensitivity across all sectors to be better prepared to supply chain volatility and disruption. Life science as a sector was not immune to VUCA factors either. And so, Alan, if you can get to the next slide, I'm sorry, I'm having some technical challenges here. If you look back at the last 2 decades, companies have been focused on taking costs out and becoming a lean and cost-efficient supply chain, and really with limited capacity headrooms. And the problem is that this has rendered most supply chains rigid and inflexible. And this is even more problematic when you are working with a significant base of contract manufacturers, which is true for pharma and life sciences sector companies as well. And companies honestly never built the muscle to sense the ensuing supply chain risks. We all have the fire drills for fire emergencies pretty much every quarter or every 6 months, but there is no training or drill for risk emergencies. And that's why companies face what they faced in the last 12 months. And the business continuity plans that most companies had were mostly either half-baked and probably never used and put into action. A lot of it is because many of the business processes are still very much manual. We are working with information in Excel files sitting in some folder on the desktop, and life science companies are still not truly connected with their suppliers. Data is being shared in batch instead of real time. Strategic suppliers and contract manufacturers still don't have a seat at the planning table. And disparate technology platforms and varying supplier IT maturity is certainly impeding integration and visibility that we so all need. I'll stay away from politics, but it certainly has added more fuel to the fire in recent past across the globe. And everyone is trying to figure out the right supply chain structure to serve their customers better. On the next page, Alan, thank you. And I think my fellow speakers will agree that 2020 is and will be the pivotal year for supply chain across the globe. The shift we are seeing is from supply chains being cost efficient to supply chains that is efficiently flexible, I call it. And digital solutions are playing a big role in enabling the strategic supply chain priorities. There's a huge push to get real-time data visibility in production, in quality, into inventory, etc., and a real-time capability to actually sense and sense the shift in demand. On the next page, this is a framework we've curated for many of our clients. We call it Sense and Respond. And across the board for our clients, an area that has become strategic priority, number one, is supply chain risk management. And we are working with a number of our clients to actually stand up risk satellite or risk control towers, as we call it, that has the capability to sense and to also respond. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is certainly playing a major role in helping build that sense capability. But beyond the ability to sense, companies are also revisiting their supply chains across plan, source, make, deliver, and figuring out how to make them more nimble and more flexible. And I know my colleague Bernali will get into that solution soon, but before that, our esteemed Professor Dr. Handfield has some tremendous research findings that underscores many of these supply chain challenges around visibility, transparency, and flexibility, and frames the case for digital transformation in life sciences sector. Dr. Handfield, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone today, and I'm pleased to share some of the current research findings that we've developed. This is based on a survey we conducted on really the current state of the pharmaceutical life sciences sector. One of the first things that we found is that more and more organizations are stating that the level of environmental complexity is going up significantly. First of all, we've seen greater risks due to the globalization of supply with borders shutting down and export-import restrictions. Delays at borders is causing supply challenges. We also see in these same global markets the packaging requirements, the serialization requirements have shifted. Many of the people I spoke with note that the packaging in particular is changing all the time based on the local regulatory requirements, and this is adding a lot of complexity and more SKUs to their portfolio. As the number of mergers and acquisitions has increased, this has also led to disparities in the integration of systems and IT complexity. We have a lot of what we call inherited programs that occur through these acquisitions, and there's a changeover of the workforce and sometimes a loss of the inherent tacit knowledge that occurs as people leave after an acquisition. And we're also seeing greater complexity due to targeted therapies. Personalized medicines are causing a lot of complexity in terms of, again, greater number of SKUs and personalized medicines, especially in areas like oncology. And finally, we're also seeing more products being produced in smaller lots and shorter production runs. And so people are telling us that they have many different customers, across different global locations. Yet a lot of these customers are saying they want a common set of data and metrics that are aligned to the requirements of their contracts. And this is causing a lot of problems from a planning perspective in terms of the increase in the portfolio, the complexity of the portfolio, expansion into new markets, often with poor forecasts and considerably smaller sales volumes. So the level of complexity is going up significantly. We're also seeing during this same period that outsourcing of production is occurring much more. The average number of contract manufacturers or contractor production facilities is going up, and more brands, especially even smaller companies as well, are planning to outsource, seeking to really completely variabilize their production structure. The share of production that is outsourced by companies is going up, and therefore this is putting a situation, it's good news for the contract manufacturer organizations, but they now have many more customers to deal with, and very often they deal with a portfolio of different products, customers, and requirements, and that's also expanding the number of suppliers that they have to deal with, and this is causing complexity on their inbound supply for these CMOs as well. So the outsourced environment is challenging, and people are assuming that CMOs are prepared to handle this, and what we're seeing is sometimes they're not. In one instance, we saw one with 11 commercialized drugs and relationships with 18 different contract manufacturers. And so there's some strategic thinking that needs to be brought to bear on some of this. What we're also seeing is greater pressure to improve manufacturing capabilities. And what you see here in this chart is a set of benchmarks of typically what we see in a manufacturing facility in the pharma industry today, those that are considered sort of best practices, but really the third column is what a world-class manufacturing plant really should look like, and what the pharmaceutical industry should aspire to be. And the first is, around stock turns. Ideally, we should see increased inventory turns. Many pharmaceutical companies, are lucky if they have 3 to 5 turns. Many of them have, 2 turns a year in many cases. This also translates to on time in full, where we should be approaching 100%, and many are in the 60 to 80% realm in terms of right first time. There's a lot of variability in the product relative to its specification limits. And that also drills down to a quality level where we look at measures of process capability and equipment effectiveness, as well as cycle time. And you can see that there's definitely pressure for companies to improve their manufacturing capabilities and build to world-class standards. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges we see in the industry today is, despite the need and these environmental complexities, when theoretically people should be sharing information more than ever, many of them are reluctant to do so. And we're seeing that many companies are really saying that we don't have good information on the current status of our production. They're having to send emails or place phone calls to even find out what the status is of their orders. There's very little visibility into change controls and the status of quality reviews and batch record reviews. And no one has good visibility into the level of inventory or their forecasts associated with those orders. And this is problematic because if you can't see what's happening upstream in your supply chain, you can't manage it. And it makes it more difficult to make promises to your customers in turn. And someone I spoke with said, wouldn't it be great if our customers could get production status visibility without having to call us or send an email? They could maybe just look at it online and get a status or a traffic light that says, what's happening to this batch by PO number, looking at the workflow. Is it in dispensing, in production quality or quality review, or wherever it is in the supply chain? So we need to be thinking about greater transparency in supply chains to be able to provide greater insight. Unfortunately, what we also see is this is difficult today, that many organizations still communicate using email and Excel spreadsheets. Many organizations have not adopted, business-to-business technologies. We see this in other industries like automotive or electronics, where there's EDI or direct ERP linkages. Fewer than 40% of companies have any kind of adopted integration. Very often they have different terminology or different standards for the information. There aren't common units of measure. Or they may be using a different technology than we do. Or they may have different data formats for this, so they're not compatible. And ultimately, what I've observed is that people are still sort of stuck in the requirement of having to exchange information either manually through Excel spreadsheets or maybe even sending it, by phone. So there's very little electronic integration still. Some of the biggest gaps, and these are areas where we ask people, well, if you could get information, if you could get visibility, where would you want that information to be? What are the types of visibility data that you would want to have? And number one is, again, production status. People want to know, where's my order? What's happening to it? When is it going to be produced? And then they also want to know, how much inventory do I have on hand at this contract manufacturer or with my critical supplier? What's the status on batch reviews? What's the status on quality control? They want to get access to materials receipt confirmation. Has the material even arrived at the CMO, and is it being prepared for production? And they also want to be able to have better information on production forecasts of when these things will occur. So these are critical priorities, and I think this is information that is available today, but it's not accessible, and it's not available. And I remember standing in front of a group of pharmaceutical executives and asking, well, why aren't you producing this information? Why can't you do it? And they sort of hemmed and hawed, and some of them said, well, that's GMP information, and we can't send that over the internet. Well, it's actually not. If you think of production status, you're talking about a volume or a production order. That's not GMP, so it's not. So that's really an excuse, I believe. And I think that organizations need to be thinking to exploit current technologies that would allow this kind of visibility to occur. And I think this also translates to when you have better data, you can have more timely measurements. So people I spoke with said we want to have better production metrics. We want to understand and be able to measure on-time delivery, and we want to be able to do this, on a monthly or even a weekly basis. We want to understand order fulfillment accuracy. We want to understand our lead times. Many of them are dissatisfied with the metrics they're getting today. They're not accurate. They're not timely, certainly, and they're not reliable. So they're not very happy with the information that they are getting. We're also seeing organizations that want better inventory information. They want, ideally, today we have the capability to provide real-time data on inventory levels. But many of them aren't even able to get weekly reports on inventory. So a majority are saying we need more frequent updates on, what's our current inventory of API, what's our current inventory on work in process, and also looking at expiring inventory. And this is a real problem. Many organizations carry so much inventory that they're not getting, they're not really getting updates on which stuff is expiring, and there's a lot of waste as a result of that. So people would want to have this at least weekly, or even better, daily. I think daily inventory updates would be something that would be a real benefit to a lot of people. I think all of these data point to a similar problem. People are dissatisfied with the current state, and organizations want a solution that can help them achieve these performance requirements. And what will that take? It will take, first of all, improved connectivity. We're going to want to get organizations to work together to share information, and this is going to require a platform, a connectivity platform for getting all companies and teams connected in the supply network. And again, this technology is not inaccessible. It's available today, and you're going to hear more about how GEP has this precise type of technology that's available that can connect organizations. It also requires that there be reliable data. To have good KPIs, good measurements, you need good data. And we've done studies on data reliability, data integrity. So we want to be able to capture that production data in a timely fashion and be able to broadcast it via control towers, via key performance indicators in a format that is readily accessible by upstream and downstream participants, and create that level of visibility across these relationships. And when you get visibility, you're able to deal with situations. You can't manage what you can't see, right? So by creating visibility, we're allowing people to see what the problems are, and they're able to address those problems. And there will inevitably be problems, but we can't manage them if we don't have visibility to them. And that leads to the final point, which is collaboration. By having a common view on data and the status of production and quality and batch production and supply, people can work together. They can make better decisions. It becomes much more of a multi-enterprise collaborative team because you're talking about shared business processes. And rather than pointing fingers and getting upset with one another, we can talk to one another, and we can talk to one another in a productive fashion. And you know, people saying, you know, I thought that I was the only one that had this problem. We're the only company, I thought. But the fact is, everyone, I think, is facing the same level of challenge in the current supply network. The conclusion is, you know, again, to manage these supply chains, we need accurate and frequent information. You don't want to communicate information that isn't correct. You know, even if you share it, if it isn't accurate, it's not useful. That results in overproduction or holding of stock, which then becomes expired. This expiration then results in extreme waste of material that's actually sorely needed. It results in drug shortages. It results in you know, poor allocation of supply. It also results in a lot of expediting. Companies spend huge amounts of money on premium freight to resolve issues of you know, simply, you know, poor information sharing. And the ultimate cost, as we said, is the inability to supply to customers on time and you know, having a shortage, drug shortages of patients that really need these medicines, you know, for life support and for their to treat their illnesses and their ailments. So with that, I'd like to turn it over, and we can talk about now how GEP is working on some of the solutions for these efficient, resilient supply chains.
Thank you, Dr. Handfield. So it was really good to hear the research and validation from Dr. Handfield as we were going through this process and preparing for this, because it really validates a lot of what we're doing from a services as well as technology perspective here at GEP, specifically in the pharmaceutical industry. So some things that you've probably heard today from Dr. Handfield is there's a lot of complexity on packaging these days, and especially with 39% of outsourced to contract manufacturing, there needs to be a lot of collaboration. Not only on the packaging, that's one example, but really on everything related to orders, bill of materials, forecast, capacity, etc. And that's where you'll really need a combination of services and technology to enable that. A lot of other things that you probably heard today also is just the tracking and the visibility on performance metrics like on time and in full, or on time delivery, stock turns, production status, quality metrics, as well as, of course, what's really important to pharmaceuticals is really batch level information and tracking, and having the set of capabilities to be able to manage that. So what we offer from a GEP perspective is really understanding of the pain points that our customers are facing. And we have services offerings which actually will focus on understanding the pain points as well as combining that with the strategic imperative to lay out a plan and it can vary from just introducing and outlining a supply chain strategy. It can also go into just the supply chain process and technology assessment overall, as well as sales and operation planning design of the organization, the processes, and the infrastructure to really address many of the pain points that companies are seeing in their supply chain, especially in pharmaceutical as well. And people like Pramod, like you've heard earlier, they will use their expertise, especially he has specialized experience in manufacturing, for example, as you heard, using that expertise to help companies manage that. And a lot of it actually also ties in very closely to software. So in many cases, when we're speaking to customers on our supply chain consulting services, there's also that technology aspect as well. And how can technology be paired up with the strategy as well as the people to really enable supply chains to be more efficient when it comes to managing day-to-day operations. GEP software has different modules involved in the software, but we are focused on visibility, which you've heard is the pain point. So inventory visibility is something that you heard from Dr. Handfield as well, and GEP has a set of offerings and solutions that focus on just inventory visibility overall, whether it's within your parameters, it could be within the contract manufacturer's site, as well as your supplier site, and depending on how you want to have and manage inventory and manage the visibility overall in inventory. Things in pharmaceuticals that are really important for the brand owners to have visibility is something like active ingredients. And knowing how much of the active ingredient is at the contract manufacturing site and then being able to replenish that in a timely fashion is something that software can also help in managing and optimize the management and the logistics process between that. From a logistics management and control tower perspective, we can provide that overall visibility as well as the control tower, and I'll talk to that in a little bit more detail later, is really connecting the dots between the different modules, the different visibility aspects so that you can actually take some kind of action on that. From a collaboration perspective, you've heard collaboration multiple times from both of the previous speakers, but really collaborating and continuous collaboration is essential. And that, I think currently many times is really offline or via spreadsheet or other mechanisms right now, especially based on the research that you just saw. But really being able to do that digitally in a regular real-time fashion is something that I know a lot of companies are trying to get to. And really a set of software that can help you manage that, especially as there are, as we all know, demand fluctuations where you actually need to, on a regular basis, reach out and collaborate with your suppliers, with your contract manufacturers to make sure that they're aware of these fluctuations and that they can actually help you with that, and you can get some kind of response and commitment back from them, or start a discussion on a real-time level on doing that. Order collaboration. So it's not only just collaboration on the order itself, but then all the little components when it comes to the line items, when it comes to collaboration on artwork and understanding the aspects of artwork and design and packaging that are required during the production process and then end-to-end finished materials. Capacity collaboration, collaborating on capacity. The list really can go on when it comes to collaboration. It can extend to quality, batch level production and visibility as well as bill of material collaboration as well. It all really starts from customer demand, and that's where a planning suite of capabilities is also needed, where you are actually taking in the market and where demands are coming from, what locations, what products are needed so that you can actually plan your operations in a collaborative fashion within your enterprise as well as outside of your enterprise with your contract manufacturing partners as well as your logistics partners. And lastly, really the risk management suite helps you prevent issues from occurring, assess issues where they are occurring and allow you and enable you to take some kind of action, whether it be corrective action, whether it be increasing of audits with certain suppliers or manufacturers, and really managing that in a single system is really where our software is at and going and continuing to do. So when it comes to just our overall software capabilities, I think I gave an overview of the different capabilities when it comes to supply chain, but we also have extended capabilities in sourcing and overall procurement as well. And if you think of the control tower, that is the glue between all the different modules within GEP, but then of course there are other systems and ERP solutions that we integrate seamlessly with. And the control tower can be the connecting glue and provide that overall visibility and lead you and lead customers to actions and collaboration and increased collaboration or situation rooms where you can actually collectively resolve issues with your customers and partners as a whole. One thing that GEP is doing just from a technology perspective is all of the different modules and systems and capabilities are really residing on one single data lake. So really no decision is made in a silo. You are looking at all the different information coming in and providing recommendations or providing visibility in that, as well as providing alerts that really connect the dots between the different systems altogether to provide you that end-to-end picture on what's going on and what you need to do. From a collaboration perspective, I think I walked through the different types of capabilities as well as the planning and visibility and execution. But even from a quality perspective, as that's really important in pharmaceutical supply chain, managing the quality aspect of it, managing the inspections, knowing based on the items that you're producing, what type of quality inspections is needed, what's the pass-fail criteria. If something fails, what are you going to do? From a systematically perspective as well as a process perspective, technology can help streamline a lot of that. And then in conjunction with that is making sure that your processes are in place to orchestrate and manage these types of exceptions so that you can correct any issues as they occur and ideally before they occur. And when it comes to just the before they occur, that's really where AI and machine learning can actually help this even further with really understanding what's going on, understanding the trends in what's going on and the data that it has and providing insights into what's going to happen in the future and what things you can do to correct that. As well as providing you recommended actions or recommendations on how you should approach a scenario that's occurred, and then actually understanding and collecting the data on similar situations that have occurred in the past really can help achieve that. And then just when it comes to just collaboration overall, just having that continuous back and forth between the different parties, between the suppliers, between the contract manufacturers on an ongoing basis with chat capabilities is another important paradigm and capability that we hope to have in our solutions, and we hope other customers kind of appreciate that as well, is because the collaboration shouldn't only be one time, it shouldn't only be on an order, but there's a lot more in between back and forth that's needed to have that resilient supply chain that everyone desires to have. Lastly, just from a capability perspective and case study perspective, we do work with pharmaceutical companies on this, and pharmaceutical companies also are looking for an end-to-end procurement and supply chain platform as an example, and that's what we're providing to them is that end-to-end capability with our supply chain as well as unified procurement, source-to-pay capabilities in one single platform that provides that end-to-end capability from sourcing to actually execution and delivering the items to the brand owner, for example, in this example, into the DCs so that they can actually execute against the customer demand. They are looking for rapid time to value with global rollouts and really a lot of these systems and streamlined processes that can be actually put together with our services aspect, as well as systems helping expedite a lot of this across different locations. You can have that standard set of processes replicated easily with software and standardization in processes overall. And then that seamless supply chain collaboration, when it comes to just the orders, when it comes to giving suppliers as well as contract manufacturers line of sight, when it comes to the longer term forecast as well as the near term forecast, in addition to capacity and quality, even bill of material information passing back and forth in a collaborative manner. Just enabling that seamless collaboration, notifying people when they need to go in and take some kind of action systematically is important, so people don't really have to sit and monitor everything on a regular basis. Exceptions and when they need to take actions, it's actually called out to them so that they can go directly in and do something about that. And then just accelerating supply chain innovation with continuous improvements, advanced analytics, with a lot of the KPIs that you've heard today, and AI and machine learning, which is continuing to be an important factor in how we look at software, but how companies are actually transforming supply chain overall to give them that leg up and the advancements that they need. With that, I do want to open it up for some Q&A. I do want to encourage everyone to ask any questions in the system itself, and we will actually take a look at your questions and take some time and make sure that we answer them as well. So with that, I do want to hand it over back to Alan, who will be facilitating the Q&A.
Thank you, Bernali. Thank you all. Again, this was a perfect conversation, a lot of topics covered. As a matter of fact, we do have a couple of questions already came in, which I appreciate. Again, we encourage everyone to go ahead and submit your questions. We would love to share those with the panel and get some answers. The first one is, I mean, clearly there were a lot of discussions about the information sharing, collaboration, visibility. So this one probably goes back to Dr. Handfield. And the question summarizes as, in an increasingly outsourced manufacturing environment, what are the best practices of information sharing and collaboration? Would you speak to that, Dr. Handfield?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to that. So what I think, the best practice is, and I've actually documented this in a book that I wrote a couple of years ago called The Living Supply Chain, is real-time information. And in that book, I documented a company, Flex, a contract manufacturer, that had 29 factories around the world. And they were able to literally be able to show all of the inventory, all of the inbound production, outbound production, current inventory in all of these facilities worldwide. And they were able to boil all of this down into a control tower that then could be dispersed, to specific individuals based on their roles. If they were a planner or a buyer or a customer, they could see the information related to their company, their supply chain, their operational requirement, and they could see it in real time. So what they were looking at was real-time data. And that's the best practice because it allows people to see exactly what's happening. You can do what-if analysis, scenario analysis. They were able to create virtual rooms to be able to look at data, bring in people, solve problems, and do this in real time. And again, I think this is something that we can all aspire to is real-time data. And, we don't expect, driving our cars down the road to get information on our vehicle speed and our gas tank, from 10 minutes ago or from last week. We need it now. We need that information today to operate that vehicle. So I think that's a great metaphor of being able to look at information in real time and be able to actually see what's happening in those supply chains. And especially in a contract manufacturing environment, you want to know, where's my order? What's going on? And where is it in the workflow? Is it in a batch review? Is it in quality inspection? And quality is one of the most common bottlenecks that we see is quality inspections. There just isn't enough quality inspectors in many facilities, and very often it gets hung up there. So I think we can also start to think about other ways to optimize those kinds of bottlenecks in a production facility, and having real-time data is one way to be able to do that.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. If I have a couple of questions, I would like to stay with the same topic, if I may. There are 3 more questions, but this one probably goes back to Bernali within the same lines of visibility and collaboration. This question refers to an analyst comment which apparently said, hey, the visibility itself had no value. So what real business value does your solution bring? Could you give a few real examples, please?
Sure. I would say that analyst is somewhat correct. Visibility does provide some value, but then really the true value comes not only from that visibility, but the ability to actually take that information and data and take action on it. So the way I look at things is, yes, you want visibility, but then you also want the ability to actually take some kind of action to react to some of the data that you're seeing. And some specific examples of that is, let's say you are seeing that demand is increasing for certain items or materials that need to be manufactured. Well, the visibility to that can only take you so far. It's good to be aware of that, but unfortunately not everything is in your hands, and you need to work with other people to address that situation. So that's where really seeing that demand increase and then being able to collaboratively work with your contract manufacturers in this example on expediting orders in a timely fashion, if possible. That could be one decision that's made and action that's taken after you see this change. If it's a more longer-term change and a more trending change, which you don't have immediate ability to or need to correct, maybe that's something that you adjust in the forecast that you are sending to your contract manufacturer, for example, and need some input back from them. So you're giving them the line of sight that there is a change going on, but that all stemmed from that visibility when it came to the demand forecast increasing. Another aspect of that is really just when you're seeing that there are on-time delivery issues or quality issues and other things like that you're seeing from the supply chain when you're monitoring the metrics. How do you actually react to that, and how do you work with your contract manufacturers in a collaborative fashion to make sure that doesn't occur again? So if there's a quality kind of issue, is there a corrective action or a plan that you expect and anticipate working with your contract manufacturers on to rectify that and make sure that it doesn't happen again? If it's a production issue, maybe there's improvements that need to be made and that visibility into that batch production. Maybe there's a problem with a specific batch. And understanding that at that detailed level, with that batch level of reporting capability, reporting on consumption, reporting on production capability, that will give you the visibility, but then it'll also allow you to react and work collaboratively with your manufacturers on a particular issue specific to a batch, for example, and knowing what you need to do if there is an issue with something going on. And those are just some few examples, Alan.
Perfect.
Yeah, and
wonderful.
Alan, if I can just build on what Bernali said about visibility, and certainly real-time visibility helps you respond and take actions to mitigate the risk that is coming at you. But even thinking medium and long term about your supply chain operations, and particularly in manufacturing and logistics, it certainly gives you a case for change and a case to embed some resiliency and flexibility in your manufacturing operations, be it having the flexibility to shift your labor and run 2 additional hours at the end of the shift, or perhaps crew up for a weekend shift. I think all those operating flexibilities are really enable the companies to flex, and flex and respond to the ensuing risk itself.
Right. Actually, interesting enough, one of the questions kind of touches on that. Maybe continue and keep you on, which basically summarizes and asks about our resiliency framework. The comment is, hey, it makes good sense, but my company supply chain maturity level is not very high. Where should we start so we can get the best benefit as quickly as possible? So that's some of the things that you already mentioned. Maybe if you just want to summarize those within that context.
Yes, and we come across so many clients, especially small mid-cap clients, that perhaps don't have the capital wherewithal to invest in significantly in a technology solution. And if that's the case, I think, in my view, the best way to start at least your journey is to have a plan. And really, last 12 months provided quite a bit of learning from the disruption we all faced, and there is an opportunity to revisit the business continuity plans that were perhaps inactive or not being used, to really capture the learning and also capture the what-if scenarios. And I think that at least would bring a sense of preparedness for what future might hold here. The second thing is around, focusing on strengthening your operational capabilities. And I did speak to some of that, but one additional operational capability I think is lacking today is around companies and organizations being able to take swift decisions, whether they want to reprioritize products or reprioritize who they want to keep whole. From a customer standpoint, I think that decision-making swiftness will serve companies well in the long term. And then lastly, this goes back to just the expansive supply and network that all companies are working with. So many of the companies have 2,000, 4,000 suppliers that they're working with, and having a regular connect with your suppliers, and not all of them. Pick your priority suppliers, check on their operational readiness, and this I think will give you better pulse on where you will have a leakage when that risk hits you. So I think those are perhaps some of the tactical things I would propose all companies and all clients do where a technology solution is too big a bite to bite at this time.
Great. Thank you. I know we only have 5-6 minutes left, so I'm just going to choose one final question, and just to kind of serve the purpose of this webinar about pharma and obviously the vaccines and COVID being in the forefront. This question probably goes back to Dr. Handfield, and this one talks about the low inventory turns as a problem, as you mentioned in your presentation, which means low inventory levels. But we have seen big out-of-stock problems during COVID. What is your insight, which again probably relates to everything we have been experiencing over the last 12 months? So what are your thoughts, Doctor?
No, that's a great question. I mean, it seems pharma carries so much inventory. Their turns are so low, yet we see these out-of-stock issues and massive drug shortages. This was especially true during COVID, and I think partially it is because of the lack of transparency and lack of visibility. And we also saw a lot of demand surges for unexpected issues, hydrochloric wind is a good example of, something that no one expected would suddenly be a surge in demand. In other cases, we're seeing, these disruptions that occur further upstream. Many of the contract manufacturers in China and India may have quality issues, and people have no idea that those are occurring, and that ripples down the supply chain and causes drug shortages in pharmacies. And so I think as a whole, the industry needs to work together to share information so that they're carrying the right inventory, the right safety stock of materials that are really important, and that could be in short supply situations. We're seeing some real risks currently at the moment. I've been working in the vaccine supply chain, and we're seeing a lot of CMOs are turning over their vaccine capabilities over exclusively to vaccine production, COVID vaccine productions, for instance, and that could cause problems in terms of other drugs that rely on those same contract manufacturers. So there could be some real risks ahead for the coming year as we roll out the vaccine, particularly on a global basis.
Right. Wonderful. Any other comments from our panelists before we wrap up? Wonderful. I would like to thank all of our participants, and especially those who have stayed along with us until the end. I just want to remind you that you will be receiving an email with a link to the recorded session if you still have further questions. I know we probably left a couple out there. Please do feel free to contact us via email. I hope this was very helpful and beneficial with some interesting insights and information. Again, we look forward to having you join us again in our next webinar. Thank you very much. Have a great day.